Hey guys, so I'm getting started on this clock, and what I'm doing is before I start the actual soldering, I'm basically just going to go through and just touch each of the contacts with, this is a rosin flux pen, and so what I'm going to do is just dab just enough on here. I don't want to get too much, mainly because I don't want to make a mess. This stuff is also sticky too. I'm just going to dab each one of these very, very lightly. This will help the solder go in. And this, by the way, this will dry, and then it will remelt when it gets heated up when we actually do the soldering. But that'll give us just a little bit of extra security there. So I've gone through and I've marked the resistance. So we have 200 ohm, 10K ohm, 100 ohm, and 470 ohm. And the board is marked, so you can see, for example, there's a 220 right there and 470 and so on. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to run those through the board. So let's start with our, let's see, we have a 10K. So let me start with that one. And they do send, for some of these, they did send a couple of extra parts. So let's see, for the 10K, this is here. And we're just gonna go through the hole. And then one of the best things to do is just bend it like this. We'll get a few of these in here, and then we'll snip these off to clean them up. So let's see, 470 up here at the top. And these are very easy to get in and flex those. And let's see, got a 100 right here. I did watch the video provided by the guy that makes the kit, and I'll put a link to that below. But one of the comments that he made was that the board is a little bit crowded once you're done. So there'll even be a couple of interesting bends that looks like we're going to end up doing. For example,
I'll go ahead and get that in there. And let's see. Oh, there's a 100 in there as well. And looks like there's a 200. So we got
those in place, and then I believe, remember right, let's see, so we do have a diode here, and the diode, you can see, get it on the camera view here, so you can see the stripe right there, and then on the board there's a stripe right there. So this is where our diode is going to go. These wires are a little bit thicker.
Just a bit more. pulled in. There we go. Nice and tight there.
And let's see, I think, if I remember right, I believe that's all for the resistors. I'll double check, but I believe that is all of them. And those look nice. So there's that, and I actually need to run out to grab my snips. But what we'll do is we'll snip these off and then we'll solder. So I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so let's snip these off. And I'm going to leave just a little bit of the bin there just to hold it on.
And we can always go back and re-snip these later if we need to. So again, those are
Still in there nicely. Now, give you what we're going to do here. So we'll heat this up. And we can look at these, and I'll pull over here. See if I can get this where you guys can see it a little bit better. So get a little bit closer view there. So what we'll do is we'll go back through and we'll trim up some of that extra wire that's there. But if you look on this side over here in particular, if you look at right there, you can see how the hole basically is filled in on these. And that's what we want to see. So that'll be good contact on these. But I'll double check these a little bit, but they are nice and solid. Should have good contact on them. So what I'll do is go through here and clean up the rest of these and do the soldering on them and go from there. So okay, guys, now we're going to start putting in some of the circuits, and we have a couple of them. So one is, so here's the first one, and you can see, maybe very, very faint, but there's a little dot right there, and you've also got the U shape here. So that corresponds to the dot on the board right here. And this one, I've already adjusted the legs so that they'll pop in. We're basically going to repeat that same process that we did before. We're going to push it in. And now this one actually has really good tension on it, so we don't need to bend these. But If you did need to, you could, of course, bend a couple of them and then leave the rest of them, and then we can snip them off. Because the tension here is good, probably what I'll do is I'll bend over just 2 of them very, very slightly, 1 on each side, and then the rest of them will clip off flush so that the solder will go down in them. So I'm going to do that on those. So that chip is in. This, as you can see, it's a K155, I believe that's an ID1. And then we also have these chips here, and these also, again, very, very faint, but there is a little dot there, and that corresponds to the dot as well as the square. You can see circle versus square. So these we just need to line up. And for these, we may need to bend the pins just slightly, get them in place, and double check. Yep, there's the dot there. And again, these, let's go in and bend very slightly the pin here. There we go. And we have 5 of those. And I believe the kit includes an extra, at least 1 extra. So let's see, there's the dot again.
All of these are oriented the same way, by the way.
I believe the one of the things that was said in the instructions was that these chips can be a bit sensitive to heat. So the suggestion was that your soldering temperature should be around 350 to, I think it was about 400 Celsius, which corresponds to around 650 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm just a hair over 650, so I'm kind of right there in that 375 range Celsius.
Get that adjusted there. And I'm just going to solder these very quickly. These don't take long. They are small pins, so at that temperature, see the solder flows very, very nicely, very quickly. So I'm going to move this out of the way and get the rest of these.
I don't know if the camera will pick up on it, but you might see a little bit of residue there. That's the flux that helps to draw in the solder. And actually, that's where most of this smoke comes from, is that flux melting. You can see it's only actually taking just a second or 2 per pin. It's very, very quick to do this. The main thing you want to do is to be sure that the solder penetrates into the board's solder. So the rings that are on the board are actually solder, or the pads is what they're referred to. So there's a little bit of solder on those. You want those to meld together, and that's what actually makes the electrical connection. In most cases where you have bad conductivity, it's where you don't get good penetration on the connection, Having too much flux can cause an issue there. And also what you don't want to happen is you don't want the solder to beat up on the surface. You want it to, again, you want it to penetrate in. So these look nicely. Now I will clean these up. What I'll do is I'll take some isopropyl alcohol and an old toothbrush, and I'll clean all this up when I'm done. But that looks good. You can actually see here, if you look there, you can kind of see how everything looks nice and solid. It all looks like one piece, and that's exactly what you want to see. So I'm going to come in here, I'll do a little bit of trimming with my snips, and we'll move on to the next one. All right, so just going to bend the connections here. The instructions want this laying flat, so this goes right here. And we don't want this standing up. We do want this down towards the board, but I don't want it, of course, to make contact right there. So what I'm going to do, to be sure that we have just a little bit of space there, is I'll do a reverse bend on the back, and then I'll snip these here in just a moment. But what I'll do in the interim is I'm going to take, the kit has this for the plug. I'm actually going to set that underneath it, so there's a little bit of a gap, and then when I'm done, I'll let that slip out. So I'm going to come in here and hold this. And get one pin done. And these are thicker pins, by the way, so now take that piece out, and you can see there's that gap there. So we're not going to be touching. Also, too, these can heat up, so we don't want it to, number one, of course, we don't want it to touch anything where it could short circuit, but also, too, we do want a little bit of an air gap there so that the heat can dissipate. So I'll get the rest of these soldered on. And these in particular, just because they are power connections, yeah, those look good. Okay, so we got that on, and what I'll do is I'll snip that off. Be sure that's nice and clean. Okay, that looks good. All right, got that on there. Okay, and we do have I forget what the instructions called. It's a variable resistor is what it is, but it can only go in there one way.
So put this in these, like that. That's nice.
The video that's provided by the guy that makes this kit, of course, he goes through in a particular order, but you could really do this in any order you want. The main thing I would say to pay attention to is that in just a little bit, there's a couple of pieces that we're going to put on, particularly the capacitors, for example, and they're going to be laying down for, and then there's also a transducer that's going to go on there that actually gets a really weird bend of the pins. So, so you do want to pay attention to the video on those, but we'll see those here in just a few moments. Let's do the big capacitor here. So we got, this is a 4.7 microfarad, and it's rated at 350 volts. And you'll see here the stripe is on the negative side. The negative side, which is the cathode, has the short leg. And on the board, we've got the negative side is up here, and you see the thickened part of the circle, that's the negative stripe. So this one is going to go in, and it's going to end up laying down because of the space limitations. So what we're going to do is we'll put this in, and actually we can put this over, and if we look kind of where we want this to sit, and then get an idea of where we need to do our bend. Actually, let me use these pliers here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend right on top of the hole. And I'll do the same thing for this side as well. These can be adjusted, of course. We'll get that bent. And of course, I bent them the wrong way. You guys can have fun with me in the comments on that. Anyway, negative to negative. As long as the final work is done right, we're good. So I'll bend those over, and we'll get these soldered in. I don't know if the camera picked up on that, but you might notice on that second one that it balled over the top for the first few seconds of the soldering, and that's because the pin, of course, is absorbing some of that heat. But no, we finally got it on there, and the top looks really good. Trimmed up. One of the things that you can sometimes see, for example, when I was doing this piece here, these are really thick pins, so you can get some really strong heat absorption, and sometimes the solder won't want to penetrate in. It really just takes either more heat or longer heat, one of the two, in order to get it to finally seal up. So, and I've got to double check the instruction video. I think this one, which goes over here, I think this one also has to be bent over, but I'll check that here in just a moment. All right, I'll be back in a moment. Okay, guys, so where I am, I'm about to mount the Arduino board, and what I've done is the kit comes with these risers here, and so what I've done is off camera, I've just soldered one pin on each side just to kind of hold it in place while I show this. On this board, and get this to focus for me. So on our board here, what we've got is we have an Arduino Nano, and this is a board that can be programmed, so it has a mini USB port on it. And when you put this on, note that there are holes in all four corners, so be sure that you get this aligned properly where you're on the connection points. You just pop these in and then pop the board on top, and then we're going to solder each one of the pins up here and then each one of the pins down here as well. Now the board's already pre-programmed. You also too want to be sure that the board is aligned. So this little square that's down here corresponds to the connection. You can also too, you'll see here the pins, for example. So we've got like D13, D13, you've got reset, reset, TX1, and it's a little bit harder to see because it's on the board on the other side here. In fact, I don't know if you can, probably won't be able to see it on camera, but it's transcribed right there. So anyway, these are all noted on here. So I'm going to go in and get all of these. Actually, I'm going to clip them first, and then I'm going to get these all soldered up.
This extra around here. Just snippy so they don't go flying. Oh. Yeah, it looks like a couple of these pieces want to hang around for the party. So these don't have to be perfectly even, just want to lower them up really. Try and get them a bit level. So you can kind of see, let me get this again.